Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin remained in critical condition on Tuesday after suffering a sudden and unexplained cardiac arrest during a Monday night football game. That's according to a statement from his team. Hamlin's family put out a statement thanking supporters during this challenging time, adding, quote, "We are deeply moved by the prayers, kind words, and donations from fans around the country." During the first quarter against the host Cincinnati Bengals, 24-year-old Hamlin got to his feet after making a tackle and then collapsed.
His heart stopped for a brief period of time after he had that tackle in the middle of the game.
Dr. Benjamin Levine is a sports cardiologist at UT Southwestern Medical Center.
There are a number of things that can cause such events to happen. Those include having underlying cardiovascular disease, genetic diseases, and things like that. Most professional athletes, especially in the NFL, are highly screened for those conditions before they start. That doesn't mean the screening picks everybody up. It doesn't.
After having his heartbeat restored on the field, Hamlin was transported by ambulance to a Cincinnati hospital where he was listed in critical condition. The Super Bowl contending Bills, in a statement posted on their Twitter account, said Hamlin spent the night in the intensive care unit at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center, where he remains. NFL fan Elena Weiler stood outside the hospital in a show of support for Hamlin.
To be honest, when something like this happens, you don't expect it. It's not something you see every day. It's like a very rare thing, I believe.
The NFL, whose regular season concludes on Sunday, said on Tuesday the game would not resume this week, and that no decision regarding the possible resumption of the game at a later date has been made. Meanwhile, Hamlin's family said they would release updates on his condition as soon as they have any.
Sam Bankman-Fried, the former CEO of a cryptocurrency exchange accused of bilking investors and clients out of billions of dollars, pleaded not guilty on Tuesday to federal fraud charges. Prosecutors allege Bankman-Fried stole billions of dollars in customer deposits to support his Alameda Research hedge fund, buy real estate, and make millions of dollars in political contributions. He could face up to 115 years in prison if convicted. Bankman-Fried founded the trading platform FTX. The MIT graduate rode a boom in the value of Bitcoin and other digital assets to build a net worth of an estimated $26 billion and become an influential political donor in the U.S. But FTX collapsed in early November after a wave of withdrawals and declared bankruptcy on November 11th, wiping out Bankman-Fried's fortune. He later said he had $100,000 in his bank account. Bankman-Fried was extradited last month from the Bahamas, where he lived and where the exchange was based. Since his release on a $250 million bond in late December, Bankman-Fried has been subject to electronic monitoring and required to live with his parents, both professors at Stanford Law School in California. The prosecution case was strengthened by last month's guilty pleas of two of Bankman-Fried's closest associates. FTX's new chief executive, John Ray, known for his work on energy company Enron Corp's bankruptcy, has said FTX was run by grossly inexperienced and unsophisticated people.
30 years ago, on January 1st, 1993, the dissolution of Czechoslovakia came into effect. In its place, two new countries were formed, the Czech and Slovak republics. The split has been dubbed the Velvet Divorce for the peaceful manner in which it was achieved. Former Czech Prime Minister Václav Klaus, who negotiated the split, says the dissolution was inevitable.
In Czechoslovakia, the Slovaks had a feeling that the Czechs are the bigger brother, big brother, and older brother, and that the Slovaks are in the secondary position in the country. I think that my task was to make the split, which I considered at that moment inevitable, to make the split friendly, peaceful, and fair.
Journalist Jiří Skácel recalls being in the Slovak capital city of Bratislava when he learned about the news.
The Slovaks had very much wanted to become independent. I was in Bratislava on January 1st, 1993, and there was a huge queue in front of the main post office. When I asked what they are waiting for, they told me they are waiting for the first Slovak post stamps. But the main post office was only open for the first time that year on the 2nd, and those people had to wait there for another whole day.
It remains untested whether the general public supported the breakup. At the time, the dissolution of Czechoslovakia was not put to a popular vote. Klaus and his Slovak counterpart Vladimír Mečiar refused to hold a referendum on the issue, a decision that some are still unhappy about.
I think Václav Klaus is probably one of the people who destroyed Czechoslovakia, and it makes me sad to say that, but I think...
American diplomat Cameron Munter worked at the U.S. Embassy in Prague in 1993.
I think most public opinion polls at the time were not in favor of splitting, but Mr. Mečiar and Mr. Klaus, for their own reasons, felt they should. Now, all this being said, I think we're fortunate that it was a peaceful split and that people are still friendly with their Slovak friends, etc.
The peaceful dissolution of Czechoslovakia stood in stark contrast to the wider state of Eastern European affairs following the fall of communism. Blood was shed in Yugoslavia when that state collapsed into warfare and ethnic cleansing. Klaus, who went on to serve as the Czech president between 2003 and 2013, says that the Czechoslovak example shows that states can divide peacefully without the need for warfare.
I would add to Kosovo and other countries, I would add even Ukraine, My understanding and my experience tells me that you have to negotiate. You have to negotiate as long as possible. That's the only way how to avoid a fighting or a war or a dramatic situation.
The suspect accused of brutally murdering 4 students at the University of Idaho arrived at a Pennsylvania court and agreed to be extradited back to Idaho to face charges. Brian Kohberger was taken into custody last week in Pennsylvania's Monroe County, where investigators say he was visiting family. The 28-year-old has been working toward a criminal justice PhD degree at Washington State University, near the University of Idaho campus. In the middle of November, 3 women and 1 man were found dead inside a residence in the city of Moscow, Idaho, shocking the small community. Authorities say the victims, between 20 and 21 years of age, all suffered multiple stab wounds. City of Moscow Police Chief James Fry.
This was a horrible crime that took the lives of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Goncalves.
2 other female roommates in the house at the time of the killings were unharmed, apparently having slept through the attack. Authorities have not publicly disclosed a motive, but have said they are confident Kohberger is responsible for all 4 killings. A probable cause affidavit that lays out the basis for the charges will offer additional details, prosecutors have said, but it remains under seal until Kohberger is physically in Idaho.
Wall Street's main indexes closed lower on the first trading day of 2023 as investors worried about what the Federal Reserve's rate hiking path might look like this year and a potential recession. The Dow ended about flat, the S&P 500 finished 0.4% lower, while the Nasdaq ended down about 0.75%. Investors are awaiting minutes from the Fed's December meeting for clues about how aggressive the central bank might be with monetary policy tightening this year and whether it might trigger a recession. Dan Wontrobsky is Associate Director of Research at Janney Montgomery Scott.
What's driving the down move in the stock markets today is reassessment on how severe a recession, can be in the U.S. based on what we've seen out of Fed policy thus far. I think traders are starting to reevaluate, how severe the type of recession that the Fed is trying to engineer here. And a lot is going to depend on labor data that comes out, wage gains, employment data, as well as other things like ISM, production, PPI numbers, and of course, CPI. So I think until you get more clarity around that, we could continue to see, higher volatility in the markets and more of kind of this range-bound trading that they're setting us up with today.
Shares of Tesla hit their lowest level since August of 2020, falling more than 12% on Tuesday, extending a steep decline in 2022 after Elon Musk's electric vehicle company missed Wall Street estimates for quarterly deliveries. Energy stocks, which saw stellar gains in 2022, started the year in the red as oil prices fell on bleak business activity data from China. And shares of Apple slumped, closing below the $2 trillion valuation mark for the first time since March of 2021, after a report from Nikkei Asia pointed to weaker demand.